of you. We'll bring you Steve Evans. This is 20 minutes, this interview, and what I think we should do actually next door is let's leave the little bit at the beginning where we read out Steve Evans' tweet, where I read out Steve Evans' tweet. So, yes, a note for the edit there. But Steve Evans is our friend who's been on the programme many times, first in April on the phone. He has terminal stomach cancer. He's a magician, a comedian. He worked for a long time for Wolverhampton City Council. Then we went to his house in May and broadcast from his backyard. And we met Septina, his wife, his 2 grown-up daughters, and lots of his friends. We sat around a table. It was a really good show. And we got to know him. We've become friends. And I think to an extent, many of you feel as though you've got to know him and that he's become a radio friend as well. And as we explain here, as he explains, we sort of joined him on this journey, a journey which, as he will tell you now, has reached its final phase. He was on the programme just over 2 weeks ago, having compared an event that went well. That was a target he set himself, but then he took a turn for the worse. They found a second tumour. I went to see him 2 weeks ago and he was in a bad way. I went to see him 1 week ago and he was much better. But still, there's no more setting of targets now. He's not planning to host another event, which was his initial plan. He had set a target of February for something else. Now it's about the conclusion of the journey, and he explains to you. He's always so insightful and always so surprising in a way, but he tells you in unflinchingly honest terms, and I think in quite an inspiring and positive way, what this final phase of the journey feels like for him. So here is my interview with Steve Evans, including the introduction as it happened on the radio today. Let's listen to my interview with Steve Evans, my friend, your friend from Wolverhampton, who's been living with terminal stomach cancer. I went to see him in hospital last week and he was looking a lot better after taking a turn for the worse. He was able to tell his many followers on Twitter how he's doing recently. So this is a recent conversation that Steve had on Twitter where he said, finding the words to articulate how it feels are proving very tricky because it's no longer cancer I'm talking about, it's preparing to die. It may be only a state of mind, but as I've said, I am at peace with my circumstances and have definitely been in worse places. We saw the professor, this morning. All is good. We've agreed no more aggressive treatment such as chemo, but will continue with required care. The prof said he sees no reason why I shouldn't be knocking around for a while yet, but we're still very much in the final phase. That's what he said on Twitter last week. And it was last Wednesday when I went to see Steve. He's been having treatment for a secondary tumour on his esophagus. And when I went to see him at Wolverhampton's New Cross Hospital, in his room there, it was just me and him, and he was full of praise for the medical staff who've been caring for him.
They're geniuses here, absolute geniuses, and they know exactly what to do. So they set me up for a particular blast of radiotherapy just to try and stop the bleeding of the cancerous growth in the new cancerous growth in the esophagus, and it worked. But I couldn't swallow because my esophagus was completely blocked. So I got no blood. I was bleeding out, and I couldn't eat.
I know. Well, I was worried about you when I got the train home last Wednesday because you couldn't.
You're gonna be worried.
I'm your friend, and I now know you, and I was worried because you weren't eating, and I thought that. Well, actually, two things. I knew you weren't eating. I knew you were losing blood, but actually you looked like you were in discomfort. You were in this very bed. Your wife Septina was here. She's not here today, but you were just writhing around and moving around, and you looked today. You look comfortable. You look healthy. You've got the colour back. You were slightly jaundiced last week. You know, it was obvious it was serious.
Yeah, it was as poorly as I've ever been.
Yeah.
And you came, I think, on the Wednesday with Dave and Maddie, and on the Thursday we had all of the treatments. And Thursday night, I thought that was the conclusion to my journey. So I'd sort of reconciled that, and I went to sleep with the aid of morphine, and then woke up being able to swallow. And I thought, I can swallow.
You actually but on Thursday when you went to sleep after you'd had the radiation, you actually thought this is it, did you? You thought it was the end?
Yes, because there was nothing. I couldn't do anything. I mean, I couldn't drink at all. I could just sort of water anything that was more denser than water. I couldn't consume, and I couldn't move really. I wasn't in any pain, but I couldn't move, and I knew what the tumour was doing. You know, they'd highlighted what was happening.
Yeah, because that's a moment you thought about. Because here we are, you're in your room, you've got your laptop here and your phone here. In the last couple of days you've been emailing, so you've emailed me, I've read it out on the radio. I noticed you were on Twitter today, because you had a lot of tweets, and, because remember, did you start using Twitter when we first spoke?
Yes.
And you talked about being trendy on Twitter.
That's right. I mean, I was trendy on Twitter before I was on Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, as a subject, I was trendy on Twitter.
You were a hashtag. You made it when you were a hashtag.
I became a hashtag. That's right. Yeah, and hasn't life changed for all of us since? But what I'm starting to do today, because this is the first day I've been strong enough, is that I will now answer all of the tweets, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
That's.
Do you like it? Because these are people that you don't really know. You know, it's never. How to describe the relationship? It's not that it's a false relationship, but they're people, you don't all know each other, but they're people that they care and they've followed your journey.
Yeah, yes, you've got it right with the last word you said, which the point is that they care, and this is all about them being on the journey. So when we were chatting a little while ago, you commented that this has evolved. Our relationship and me being on the radio has evolved. You can't just be the man that people trundle out because the jolly man with cancer. I mean, that's appalling. We started off, we talked about those issues, and then we started talking about the bigger issues and the importance of friends. Yeah. And then as we've gone on, it's now these chats are about you and I, not just me, because this journey affects you as well. As you said yourself after you came to see me last week, it's not nice when you leave, because I really was very poorly. Now, the listeners, we have entered their lives. Our journey has entered their lives, and the way they communicate that and the way they're part of the journey is through Twitter. And that's why it's important. Yeah. It is very important because we've made this decision to have these conversations on national radio.
How's Sep? So Septina, your wife was here last week when we came, and how's she getting? She was very strong last week. Well, she's very impressive, Septina. I mean, how is she coping? How's she getting on?
She had her mum in here as well. So her mum had been in here for 3 weeks with tummy and stone issues, and she's now gone home. So one of the things we've had to do, of course, is she visitor manages, because sister is very good, but you are only allowed 2 visitors. Now, obviously, we have a private room, but we've been having 10, 12, 14 people.
Have you?
And
you had 14 people in here?
Not particularly in here, so they have to be managed because this is a hospital ward, and there's other, there are other patients, and they're very important.
But tell me, was the Sep's okay? Because you were saying, last Thursday you had that moment where perhaps you thought this was the end of the journey.
Well, yes. Where we are now, and we've got some decisions to make. So we have a secondary tumour now, which is on the liver, and that's completely brand new. And you have to make a decision as to what do you do. Do you plough on and now say, well, let's try and attack that with a third line of chemotherapy treatment? And then chemotherapy is as stressful as you know, because you've seen me through chemotherapy. Or do you say, well, quality of time is better than quantity of time? So these are decisions that the family and the professor and myself are now going to be making.
Because you've got the secondary tumour, is it in the liver now?
Yes,
You've got a cancer in the liver, that's what you told me in the email.
Yeah.
And so that can be tackled with chemo. It's the primary cancer that's still the big concern. Is that right?
Yes, but as with all of these things, the real answer is very complex and lengthy. The reality is that a cancer that's on the liver, like the new tumour, its size isn't particularly important. It's arrived more than big enough to be able to stop my liver working. Right. But you won't be able to see from a scan what it's doing. It'll just do it. So with all of the will in the world, unless you're willing to attack it sufficiently to completely remove it, as long as it has mass, it has the facility to do its job, which of course is to conclude the journey. The goals aren't relevant now, because I could live till February. There's nothing to say that I can't, but I have to live in the moment now, because we can see what's happening. We don't know how long the various, we don't know what's going to happen now, because I think we're certainly looking to have a quality of life rather than a quantity of life, and we just have to take things literally, moment by moment. So if I'm fit enough to be able to do things without it being a military operation to do them, well then I'll do that. But if things need a lot of preparation, I won't be doing them. I was due to lecture for the Magic Circle in London on Monday, and if I possibly can, I'm not going to be able to this Monday, but if I possibly can present that lecture, I will, because I also said to you in the email yesterday, and it was very difficult to explain the importance of this to the rest of the world. I found out yesterday that I'd been granted status of associate member of the Inner Magic Circle with silver star.
I know what this means. I know, but I was going to congratulate you in person, because I could tell from the email that, admittedly, this is a new world to me, yes. The world of magicians, but that is hard to achieve.
Yes, it is.
Because of the performance level needed.
That's right. Yes.
And secondly, it means a lot to you.
Well, yes and yes, quite simply. Yes. I really like going to the Magic Circle headquarters in Stevenson Way in London. I really enjoy it. It's a lovely place, and I love the shows that I've done there. And I really like the friends that I've made within the Magic Circle. It's just a win-win-win and a multi-positive for me. And to receive this is just super.
Right.
Really is super. So I hope to be able to do that lecture. Other things, if we remain fit enough, we will do. Yeah. So you do things in retirement, but the setting of goals and aiming for things, that has to go now, because there's a lot of stress and planning, and we don't have the control. We just don't have the control to be able to do what we did before.
And the time is uncertain, is it now? You just don't know.
That's an important thing for anyone listening to this to understand, is that I'm not saying goodbye.
No.
But we've got no control over it, so we don't know how long it will be. So but then you've got the issue. We'll have new life issues when I go home, because we won't live in limbo. We will live exactly the same as we have for the last 2 years. There will be subtleties. I just don't know what they are. I don't know what those differences are yet, because we haven't experienced this phase of the journey. But what has happened is that I can only describe it as letting go. It doesn't mean giving up. It certainly doesn't mean that. I would never do that. But you just literally let go, and just. You can't influence things. You can't affect them greatly, so you just let them go. And these targets that we had and events that we were going to do, if I've just let them go, and if I'm fit enough to be able to do them or able, well, that would be great.
You know what you said in the email as well was you said you have such a great turn of phrase. This is one of the reasons that people I think like listening to your conversations on this program so much, but also because you're hilarious. But you also, it is insightful, and you write very well and speak very well. And you were saying in the email that I always wondered, that you consider this the final stage, I think, of the journey, and that you always wondered what this journey, this part of the journey, would feel like. And he said, and you know what, it's okay.
Well, it is, and my doctor, he has experience with hospice, end of life care, and although he said that people perhaps don't articulate it as I have, how I am approaching it is very typical in those environments. It isn't giving up. It is. I don't know what the words are. It's not being reconciled to fate. I don't think it's even that.
I suppose, aren't
yes,
you?
it is.
Because you were scared, and you did say you were scared, weren't you?
Yes, all through the journey. All through the journey, you're scared all the time.
What were we scared of?
You use the word scared because it's an emotion, and it is an easy way of describing that sort of disappointment that you have, that you're not going to live the life that you thought you were going to. The life of the moment, as you know, because you've been part of it, over the last 2 years has been wonderful. And many would say idyllic, including us. I mean, we literally have had this great life. But because it isn't very long, and you don't know how it's going to end, we are all fearful of what we don't know. And that's where the fear comes, because you don't know how things are going to end. So it's fear of the unknown, and that's what keeps coming into your mind.
Do you have to let, just for other people who might be in a similar situation, and quite a lot of people, there are several people listening that are in a not completely dissimilar situation. We can tell from the emails that have come in that, do you, perhaps this is from the early part of the journey, but those feelings of disappointment or feelings of anger or bitterness, because how do you let those go? Because you got cancer. But you've led, I remember this from our conversation in your backyard, you've led a decent lifestyle.
Yes,
you've done nothing to contribute to this. You don't deserve this.
But I've never had the anger or the any of those feelings. I've never.
But it must have felt unfair, I suppose.
No.
Initially. No,
never had that at all. Never felt that why me and why not someone else. Never felt that I was better than anyone else, so therefore I should have some sort of rite of passage. Never felt angry or bitter. No, I've never felt any of those emotions. I don't have any logic to it. I just don't feel them. It's just not how I am. I don't know why. I mean, I just, it's just, there was no logic to me to feel those emotions. It just didn't occur.
And Septina and your daughters and your close friends, are they? How are they finding this? Do they accept it? It's entered the final stage of the journey, and how are they?
Well,
how are they about it all? How are they coping?
Well, I mean, I've been in here, so I sent the original text basically saying that sort of a team would now form, really, which are very private words, and it related to the fact that there were people within the friendship group, because as you know the friendship group is quite large, who would gather and they would form the team that will now be with us for as long as it's needed. And I knew who would come. And I knew who would come. Even though I'd never spoken to them about it. I knew they would come, and they did. Every single person who I thought would come came to the hospital. So the team is in place now. So that's that. What we've done separately is that family were concerned at the information that I was giving in the text that I sent to my close group, because it is quite extensive, and it is quite difficult information because it relates to my condition. And the reason that I've done that is that I've experienced it myself, where you have a friend who is on this sort of journey, and there isn't clear communication. You don't know whether you can go visit. You don't know what your role is. You don't know how you can best support the person. You're upset yourself, and you're getting third-party information, and then all of a sudden you find out that it's too late for you to have gone and seen the person, or those sort of things. So I've, with the girls, because obviously for the last week I haven't been able to do anything other than lie in bed and sleep.
Oh, you said that the very close friends and family, that they themselves are upset, and I've not had a very close relative in this position, but it must be quite complex to know how much of that to reveal in a way. Do you think people tell you how they feel, how this experience is, what this is like for them?
No, because if I asked them, they would tell me, but that they know how important they are has become apparent in the last week. There was no plan, but there was no plan, so there was nothing to have worked. But what happened was, all of my, as I said, my friends gathered, and that's what's happened, and I know how important it is to them, because they are so important to me.
Well, that's it for my interview with Steve Evans and this edition of the Daily Bacon podcast. We're back tomorrow with, I assume, the Moanin and I think Kate A.D. and a few other bits and bobs. That's it. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for coming back to me. If you want to write to Steve Evans, his Twitter handle is @SteveEvans51. @SteveEvans51. But we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
On digital and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
bbc.co.uk/5live.